Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. Just here to report about a news story breaking. Keefe D, aka Wayne Davis, has been arrested for the murder, or in connection with, rather, the murder of Tupac Shakur in 1996. So this is coming 20 plus years after the original incident has happened. But my whole thing is Keefe D has been saying that he was in connection with the murder for about just as long. He even wrote a book about it. He has a memoir um, about this incident. He has various Vlad TV interviews about the incident. He even bragged about it on several occasions. His book his book Compton Street Legend goes into detail uh, what it was like the night that Tupac was murdered at the MGM Grand Casino in Las Vegas. So my whole thing is this is how long it took them to solve this case. I mean, he was telling you since day one he was going on and on about how he did it. You know how he was involved with it. How the late Orlando Anderson, his nephew, was was the one who pulled the trigger. Everything that happened leading up to the incident, the chain snatching a week before that of one of Pac's associates that caused the fight in that lobby. Um, Even the alleged connection, the $1 million bounty put on Pac and Suge's head by P Diddy. He went on about. So he's been telling y'all this for the past 20 something years, almost, just about. And finally, they caught up to him. Like, maybe they didn't have enough evidence to actually convict him. But here, you had confessions. I remember watching the movie Un, Unsolved that came out, uh, the movie on USA Network, and he was a featured character on there. The murder rap documentary that Soledad O'Brien and Ice T did. He was featured on there, and of course the Vlad TV interview. But for all those like Rick Ross that been saying for years that Vlad or Vlad TV is the cops, this is finally confirmation. And Dame Dash has been saying it for years too. Vlad is the police because they can actually take Vlad's interviews with people and actually play them back in the court as evidence. Here you got Vlad having multiple people, not just Keefe D, but multiple other people confessing to various crimes that have no statute of limitations on them, including murder. They confess gang affiliations. They confess drug deals that have went down. I've seen, they confess but all this other shit that they're always confessing on Vlad's channel. So Vlad, to me, he is the Pope. You know what I'm saying? Whether or not he's connected actually with the police, um, is irrelevant. He gets multiple people locked up. Lil Boosie has gotten locked up before. Casanova 2 times he's gotten locked up before. Mad people. So Keefe D is just one of those, uh, one of the latest cases that it's happened with. But this Keefe D thing, this comes as no surprise to me because I've been knew about this. You know what I'm saying? This was like the worst kept secret ever that Keefe D, Dwayne Davis, was behind uh, was in collaboration with his own nephew, Orlando Anderson, to murder Tupac. You know what I mean? Like, this is like the biggest no brainer ever. Okay, yeah, I was gonna mention that the house raid. Uh, Lisa, thank you. The house raid was what ultimately got to him. But I mean, really, I'm sure he had no other slip ups after before. I mean, I'm sure he's had other slip ups. That's what I want to say. I'm sure he's had other slip ups, and just this evidence alone. I mean, when you publish a book and you in detail Compton Street Legends book, which I've read the Compton Street Legends book, where he basically is telling you in plain English, the guy is telling you that he is connected to this infamous murder that happened 27 years ago. Shouldn't that be enough evidence to convict a person? I mean, they're telling you in their own word, and they're not even hinting at it. They're not even saying maybe I did it, maybe I didn't, putting speculation out there. They're actually telling you in plain English that, uh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, they need physical proof. I get that. But it's enough to convict the person, at least, and bring them into trial. You know what I mean? Maybe they need a weapon in connection, in connection with it, and they finally got it, good for them. But it took them 27 years to get something physical on this person that has been going around for years, practically. Not practically, like I said, but in reality, telling you, basically bragging about it for years. Now, the other part that he said, that to me is the most interesting one, is the $1 million bounty. The one basically he's suggesting that P Diddy and Biggie paid him $1 million uh, to do something, to do harm or to kill Suge Knight and Tupac, and and that that wasn't the reason, according to him in his book. That wasn't the reason why he did what he did, but that that was that was put out there. Now it's been denied that Puffy hasn't addressed the P Diddy hasn't addressed this situation, but according to Lil C's, who said that he didn't, that he denied that Biggie and Puffy put out this $1 million hit. You know what I mean? So that might be something that police want to look into, I think. You know what I mean? And that might be something that would get Diddy and Diddy's people, a little bit shaken up because now we're unearthing old ghosts of how the beef was, and it's a possibility. You know what I mean? Because everybody pretty much knows that when Diddy and them went out to LA and whenever they would be out in LA, they had as their security Southside Crips who were rivals to Mob Piru Bloods, who Suge and his. Okay. Mo Preem, Tupac's stepbrother, called the arrest of Davis 27 years after the death of the rapper bittersweet. We have been through decades of pain, he told CNN. And they have known about this guy who has been running his mouth for years. Exactly. So why, for now, this is not over? We want to know why and if there's any other accomplices. Exactly. This guy has been saying the same thing for basically 27 years. And I get that they need physical evidence. I get that. I get it that they needed a gun or whatever, a smoking gun, if you will, in a literal case or whatever, a murder weapon used. But I mean, this guy is a well-known, notorious Southside Compton Crip. You know what I'm saying? OG in the game. You mean to tell me that he hasn't, and he's been living in Las Vegas for years. They called him at his Henderson, Nevada home. So he's not been living in Los Angeles for years, but he's had a connection to uh, a a notorious gang in Southern California. I mean, come on, his gang affiliation is well known. His rap sheet is well known. You mean to tell me that this guy never got in trouble with the law at all in the past 27 years? That they couldn't have looked into this case? That they couldn't have used his? I mean, poor Russell Poole, uh, um, the um, the cop that was on this case that the movie Unsolved is about, Jimmy Simpson's character. Jimmy Simpson of Westworld fame plays his part. Russell Poole died trying to uncover the mystery of the murders of Tupac and Biggie and how weaved into conspiracy this whole um, this whole situation was, and even he knew about Keefe and Keefe's connection to the murder. So it wasn't like okay, oh, this is something new. Like this is not a name. This guy is not a name that we've heard before. We've heard this name. People that have followed this case, people that have read Labyrinth, and people that have watched movies like Unsolved, people that have known about Greg Kading, who was on this case after it was renewed after Biggie's mom filed the lawsuit. I mean, I mean, Russell Poole, like I said, he he uncovered a hell of a lot more when it came to this case than even they're just scratching the surface when it comes to Keefe D's confession, because you have LAPD tied to this. You have basically the whole Compton Police Department, which was shut down for corruption years after. You know, you have the Rampart scandal, which was the scandal in the 1990s where they were planting drugs on citizens in places like Compton and South Central Los Angeles. You know what I mean? So you have that tied into it. You have a whole bunch of stuff that they're just scratching the surface. And when Russell Poole was going around and telling this to people, telling his theories to people, people were looking at him like he was a crazy man. He drove himself so crazy trying to solve this case that he actually died of a heart attack. Chief Deputy District Attorney Mark D. D. Giacomo described Davis as the on ground, on site commander. Order. Yeah, he basically was. And here's the kicker for me, guys. This guy grew up with Suge Knight, and he was actually on a Little League or Pop Warner football team with Suge as a kid. You know, and he grew up with Easy E. You know, and so he is basically tied in with the whole scene. You know what I mean? This whole um, Compton rap scene, and that leads to a whole bunch of other. That leads to a whole bunch of other speculation because people haven't let people talk about the connection with Biggie and P Diddy. The fact that uh, Biggie's cousin or one of Biggie's relatives and or associates, Matty C, um, was connected with the Crips. But what people don't talk about is Suge Knight's motive to want to be involved with the murder of Tupac. The fact that Tupac wanted to leave Death Row Records and start his own label, you know, which the movie kind of, the Tupac movie, um, All Eyes on Me, kind of hints at that, and people have kind of suggested that for years, but they're not even talking about the possibility that uh, uh, Suge could have had anything to do with it. And plus, The person that put him in charge of taking Tupac's life. Um, well, I don't know what you mean by that, at least, because if you mean by that, whoever is the leader or whatever, I mean, apparently, according to him, it was, according to him, he never implicated Sugar on any of that. According to him, it was something that he and his nephew did on their own volition in retaliation to the fight. Because the $1 million that was supposedly paid to him, or uh, supposed to be paid to him by Puffy and Biggie, was never paid to him. Was never given to him. They they went back on that and they didn't give him any money. So he had beef with both of them. So which actually puts him in a weird way as somebody who could have been behind both murders in a weird way. Which I don't think so. I believe, well, they don't have any hard evidence that he did, but this detective Russell Poole that I'm talking about, that Greg Caden followed up the case after Biggie's mom basically sued the LAPD for the, the failure to resolve his case, suggested, always believed that he kind of did. You know what I mean? So that's always been a conspiracy theory out there because the case is so convoluted when you look at these two cases together, even though they occurred in separate cities and months apart. When you look at these two cases together, it kind of looks like the same orchestrator behind uh, both both incidences. So we don't know if Suge Knight had anything to do with it. But the fact that Keefe D grew up with Suge, even though they were in different, they had different gang affiliations. Most of the Death Row team, or most of the security in Death Row was all um, Mob Pyru Bloods. Reggie Wright, who is a former Compton police officer who does interviews with Vlad, and he had his own podcast a while back with Mob James. Mob James, another guy who does interviews with Vlad, talks a lot about the inner workings of Death Row Records during that time. And talks about how Death Row had connections with a lot of Mob Pyru Bloods, including Mob James's own brother, Buntry. You know what I mean? So even though Keefe D and Suge Knight, different different gang affiliations, one a Southside Compton Crip, the other one a Mob Pyru Blood, you know what I mean? They did grow up together. So it's a possibility that Suge may have had something to do with it. But as it looks now, no. But who knows? This uncovers a whole. This uncovers. This reopens the case, basically. Reopens Pandora's box when it comes to this. So it may be possible that Suge did have something to do with it. I think he did. Most people believe he might have. You know what I mean? Or at least he had a motive behind killing Pac. But the fact that it took Las Vegas police this long, to, I don't think it was ever closed officially, but people just kind of, after a while, like with Biggie's case, after a while, I believe the people that they say uh, did Biggie's murder actually did Biggie's murder too, and that was David Mack himself, David McCullough, a former police officer who was in Suge Knight's employ. Some people say Amir Muhammad uh, was another suspect, according to Greg Hayden's book. So we have to see. Maybe this will open up for Biggie in the future to figure out who was behind Biggie's murder. But I'm glad to see this happen. But it was kind of hella obvious to me, in my opinion, when they named Keefe. I watched the Keefe D interview. I read Keefe D's book. Of course, I watched Unsolved. It tells basically the whole story, going back to Pac's the shoot, the first shooting of Tupac here in New York in Quad Studios, and tells that whole story and the friendship between Biggie and Pac and how that whole thing um, dissolved. Yeah, it was real obvious. I mean, he was going around telling people for years. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like he was hiding it. I mean, Vlad TV, like I said, Vlad. This is one of the things that Vlad always talks about is the is Suge Knight and how Death Row was run. He has a bunch of Mob Piru Bloods on there. He has Keefe D. He always talks about this because this is the biggest case in all of hip hop history. The Biggie and Tupac murders. Nothing in hip hop before or since has ever been this big. This is the murder of Biggie and Tupac is hip hop's equivalent of the JFK assassination. It's something that people talk about and will continue to talk about forever. It's like if you wanted to compare it to something in history, I would say the JFK assassination. Or if you wanted to compare it to like wrestling fans know, like the Montreal screw job, something that we've heard for the longest. Like people know this case. People that have studied this case know this case inside and out, just like people that are aficionados of the JFK assassination know it inside and out, know every single detail. You know what I mean? So this case was similar. And Vlad, he covers hip hop. So of course he's talked about this ad nauseum. And people that have watched his channel um, for years and years, like I have, know that he's talked about it. But now look, he's made the Keefe D interview where Keefe D confesses to the murder. He's made it a members only interview. So you can't just access it freely anymore. You got to pay for it because I mean, but it just goes to show you watch what you say on Vlad because he will use that shit against you. you know, he's done it before and he'll do it again. And this is another example. But yeah, and he had a motive. I mean, his nephew Orlando Anderson was the guy that Tupac beat up in the lobby that night after the Tyson fight. You know what I mean? So, despite having the connection he had with Bad Boy, allegedly, he still had, or with Suge, allegedly, he still had a motive regardless, because Pac beat him up that night. Pac and the Death Row guys jumped him because earlier in the day, or a couple weeks before that, he had apparently robbed somebody of their Death Row chain, uh, Keefe D's nephew, Baby Lane. So they were doing it as a retaliation to what he had done. Yeah, the guy's name was Trevon Lane. That Orlando Anderson robbed his chain, and Pac and them were getting at Orlando Anderson that night after the Tyson fight. Because, like people say, that Tyson fight that they were at, just like any other Tyson fight back in the day, was really short. So all the guys were really hyped up, They were hyped up after the fight, and they were like, all right, we're going to get this dude. And they saw him in the lobby, Keefe D's nephew, and they beat his ass. So, of course, he goes back and Keefe is with him, and they orchestrate the murder of Pac because they're going to get revenge for him getting his ass kicked. So, that's basically, according to Keefe D, what went down. Now, whether or not there was conspiracy, somebody paid him off, Biggie, P. Diddy, or Suge, whomever, that we'll never know. But we know about what actually went down. He's been saying it for years. I just think that the Las Vegas Police Department looked the other way when it came to this. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of racism involved, especially when it comes to Tupac and law enforcement agencies. It wasn't like Tupac was the greatest friend of law enforcement agencies. I mean, hey, we could say that the FBI and other law enforcement agencies probably had it out for Tupac since before he was even born because of his mom's connection um, with the Panther 21 and the fact that she got off for that incident. You know what I mean? FBI and stuff, alphabet alphabet city groups, FBI, CIA, alphabet boys. You know what I mean? They probably had it out for him for since that time. You know what I mean? Since before he was even out of his mother's womb. And then the shootouts he had with police in places like Atlanta, that didn't help. You know what I mean? He always had confrontations with law enforcement. So it wasn't like law enforcement was in a hurry to solve his murder to begin with. You know what I mean? Because he's basically public enemy number one to a lot of people in law enforcement. Or they didn't care about the murder, exactly. Because that I'm telling you, this USA Network special, this movie, Unsolved, that's where they portrayed it. You know what I mean? Like it's just rappers. You know what I mean? That's what rappers do. You know what I mean? They're violent. They sing about gangsterism. They embody gangsterism according to them. Their lives really don't matter. You know what I mean? Because they're just black rappers. You know, you know what I mean. According to them, so that's how they saw things. You know what I mean? And the fact that they waited 20, right? That's what I was thinking too. Lisa says, sad that his mom's not here to see this man get arrested though. What I do hope, yeah, I agree. What I do hope is that Valletta Wallace gets justice for her son because that would be sweet to see both these murders solved and we can finally move on because hip hop has never really had closure when it came to this. You know what I'm saying? This is a black spot on hip hop's legacy. The murder of these two men because we've never really been able to move on from this. You know what I mean? Hip hop used to be about verbal jousting. Used to embody the battle rap ethic, and sometimes it still does. You know, we see it, but there's always when there's battle raps and there's beefs between rappers. There's always that black cloud that hangs above hip hop that we don't want another Biggie and Tupac. You know what I mean? So I think, of course, solving these cases will never bring them back, unfortunately, but it will bring closure in a way to hip hop, you know, solving the murder of these two men. You know, something that hip hop has never had. You know what I mean? Closure. This is a dark cloud that looms over the legacy of hip hop in a way. You know what I mean? When these guys died, this took the fun out of hip hop to me. You know what I mean? And for many years, there was always that fear that other rappers would die as a result of this East Coast, West Coast beef that was basically manufactured by the hip hop media at that time. Stations like Hot 97 and magazine publications like Vibe added to the rumor mill that contributed to the toxic environment between the camps of these two rappers and the whole West Coast. Like the beef between two men caused the whole West Coast to hate a whole East Coast, even though most people from the West Coast had never been to the East Coast, and most people from the East Coast had never been to the West Coast. So it became something more than just a a dispute between two men. It actually what became a civil war between two regions of the country. You know what I mean? Which we've never really recovered from. Because think about it. When in 2020, when Pop Smoke died in Los Angeles, right? What was the first thing that a lot of people thought? They thought of these murders. You know what I mean? Because why? Because we've never really gotten over it. We've never really gotten closure. And we've never gotten closure because the murders have never been solved. You know, so this is a step in the right direction, I feel. But as far as the whole Vlad thing, yeah, I would or anybody, you know, that goes on Vlad TV and you know talks about crime, you know, their life, their ex life, you know, because he has gang leaders on there. He had King Tone from the Latin Kings on there. You know, he's had a couple of prison gang uh, luminaries on there. And you know, you just have to be very careful of what you say on his show because he's a person that, of course, he thrives off negativity. You know, but he'll have murderers. Right, exactly. Lisa says, yeah, their beef to this day still affects the hip hop community. When we see two artists beef, I see on, yeah, yeah, even female artists, Cardi B and Remy Ma a couple of years ago with, Cardi B and Nicki Minaj a couple of years ago, and Nicki Minaj and Remy, you know what I mean? Because people are scared. People are still scared. You know what I mean? And hip hop didn't, before them, hip hop didn't used to be that. Hip hop came out of battle rap. That was the whole point of hip hop, battling. You know what I mean? Using hip hop, using the five elements of hip hop as a piece, you know, to do things peacefully instead of killing each other in gangs like people were in the 70s, particularly in New York, where hip hop was born. Instead of killing people, they decided, okay, instead of killing somebody, we're going to battle rap with them, or we're going to graffiti battle with them, or dance battle. And over time, that turned sinister. And this was the culmination of this murder of Biggie and Pac was the culmination of that. And we were never able to recover from that. You know what I mean? It's still something that sticks with us. And I think it's because you can't put something behind you if you don't have closure. And we've never had, as a community, closure because of this. You know what I'm saying? It'd be like if, imagine 9/11 if bin Laden was still alive, or bin Laden was never. Right. Okay, Lisa says, just recently, last week, I saw somebody tell Cardi and Nicki to knock it off with their beef, especially after Nicki's husband threatened Offset. Yeah, I mean, look at this Remy Ma uh, rap battle league with, um, her incident with her and Papoose, the alleged affair. You know what I mean? This could turn. People are thinking in the hip hop world, you know, this could turn ugly. You know what I mean? Because when you get into these personal beefs, like was involved here, people have fans. You know what I mean? And sometimes people's fans and supporters and family members are a little bit more crazier than the average person. And they become obsessed and they feel like they have to take it into their own hands and do things. But these two guys' cases never being solved, you guys, is like if, imagine 9/11 if bin Laden was never caught and bin Laden still was out there 27 years later or whatever, telling people that he did 9/11, he did 9/11, he was never brought to justice, and nothing was ever done about it. You think America as a country would have closure from 9/11? No, we still be thinking about it because it's never been put to bed. That's how this is for the hip hop community, because this was such a huge turning point. People don't remember. People like Lisa and people like myself that were alive back then, we remember how scared we were for our favorite rappers, especially those that were associated with Death Row or Bad Boy. We was scared. We was petrified. People were saying that Snoop was next. People were saying that Diddy was next. People were saying that Ice Cube may be next. I mean, Snoop got his truck or whatever, his vehicle, bomb proof because of this. You know what I mean? This is how scary this was. we didn't know who was next because everybody was so involved and so embroiled with this feud, to the point where they had to call Minister Louis Farrakhan to have a sit down, a famous sit down with all the rappers from East Coast as well as West Coast, not just those involved, but all the, you know what I'm saying, all the rappers from there. And if this were something like this were to happen in today's hip hop world, it'd be a lot worse because we see it with the drill beefs. You know what I mean? We see like these drill rappers killing each other and just, bragging about it on their songs. You know what I mean? At least back then they were a little bit more conscientious, a little bit more sympathetic towards the families. If something like this were to happen today in 2023, I don't think they would be as sympathetic. But I remember how scary this was. So, like I said, so scary. The minister Louis Farrakhan had to sit everybody down, and he and the Nation of Islam were the ones mainly responsible. And Steve Harvey's show, that episode of Steve Harvey when Snoop and Diddy appeared on Steve Harvey, and they shook hands for the first time publicly. Everybody in the real world was just like the kids on that show. You know what I mean? Scared. Well, if Diddy and Snoop, right, Busta Rhymes told the female rappers to stop with their beef on the BET Awards. Yeah, because people are still scared. People from that generation, they don't play that because we experienced that. You know what I'm saying? We are very petrified. But yeah, I'm glad they caught this guy. They need to hurry up and catch Biggie's killer and reopen all that can of worms. I don't believe that Big and Diddy had anything to do with this. I don't know about the $1 million that they offered him. Maybe they did because I mean the beef was pretty heavy, back then in the mid '90s. But let's see how much time he gets exactly. Anyway, thank you guys for contributing. Hit the bell button to see when my next video is coming out. Love you guys. Peace. And justice for Tupac and justice for Biggie. Rest in peace. And Lisa, thank you for contributing and welcome back to the channel. If you come back, peace. And this is completely off topic, but I will be talking about, I mean, I will not be talking about Diane Feinstein or doing a video on her because, I mean, rest in peace. She died, passed away. She did serve her country for years and years, but I know virtually nothing about her. So, anyway, peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.